starting. Oh, we're here. What's going on, everybody? I am here with Holly Seeliger. And as you all know, I am Niko House. This is not Mikasa Sukasa, believe it or not, despite popular belief, because I'm here. This is actually something new that Holly and I decided to do for a couple of reasons. One, well, we sound great together, so we decided to do a show together. But two, I guess now is as good as a time as any to make the announcement. Holly has joined the MCSE network, and we are absolutely excited to have her because Holly is amazing, extremely intuitive, and really has a very unique way of delivering her message and her truth. And so I'm happy, of course, to have her on the network. What's going on, Holly?
Thanks, Niko. I'm super excited. I've been trying to hold back on announcing the news to my viewers, so it's good timing, and really looking forward to working with you and all the rest of your crew that you've got started up.
Oh yeah, we're getting pretty deep too. I think we're like eight or 10 people deep. We have, for those of you who don't know, Garland Nixon is another one. Tim Black actually might be coming to the network also, just because he's tired of getting screwed over by YouTube, and it's always good to have a little network to fall back on. We have Fiorella and Brandon. Well, Fiorella and Craig have the Convo Couch. Brandon BC DeGraff, who's the author of Bernie One, he's on our network as well. We have some sports broadcasters who just came onto the network, along with Let's Talk Nonsense with Royce Harrison and Jared, and that show is freaking hilarious. It's two former conservative Alabama boys who became progressive.
I'm gonna have to check that out. That sounds good.
Yeah, it's fun. It's not for your kids though. It's not for your kids. So today we have a couple of topics we're going to talk about. One being the BuzzFeed article, or excuse me, but the fact that BuzzFeed is suing the DNC, which I find absolutely hilarious. And what's the second one?
The second one is about the 200,000 people who were purged in New York City from the voter rolls during the primaries. Yeah.
I mean, I'm definitely, I was supposed to know that. I like literally have a viral video about that of me yelling at the B. Like, I don't know if you ever seen that video, but it's hilarious. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about, like I said, is the fact that BuzzFeed is suing the DNC. So essentially, remember whenever the Trump dossier first broke out, BuzzFeed was the one who leaked it. And I don't know why they did that, but they did because they're, attention whores. But so when they leaked it, they didn't redact any of the names. They didn't verify any of the information. They're just like, hey, world, here's an unverified and salacious document that could potentially launch us into World War III. Here you go. Like, I don't know why they did that. But now, because they were sued, they were sued by, who are they sued by? Let me tell you, I'm gonna tell you right now. It's a Russian person. Surprise, surprise. Alexis Gubarev. Now, BuzzFeed believes that the DNC has information that could show a link between Gubarev and the email hacking, which would undercut his libel claim. We're asking, and this is according to a federal court, to force the DNC to follow the law and allow BuzzFeed to fully defend its First Amendment rights. I'm gonna let you talk about that because I have way too much I want to say about it. But do you find anything ironic about that?
I just think it's like, I mean, BuzzFeed just has like egg all over their face right now. Like they got caught putting forward this lie, like you said, like, that could have potentially started World War III. Like they're rebringing up all the Cold War. They're blaming the elections on all of this. It's the BuzzFeed, they call it the Steele dossier. Like, a few months ago, if you had even questioned the dossier at all, like you were just hated.
Yeah, you're a communist. You're a communist.
Yeah, exactly. Point. Yeah, you're supporting puppet. Yeah. And so it's like now it's slowly they're finding out, oh yeah, little by little, they're like, oh yeah, this wasn't real. This wasn't real. This wasn't real. Oh wait, the whole thing was made up. And we put it forward without verifying anything. And now that they're getting sued, they want to turn and blame the DNC on it.
Yeah. And what's hilarious about that to me is the fact that, well, it's essentially BuzzFeed suing the DNC for documents because they decided to print a document that was paid for by the DNC, which I find is like, it's hilarious because, well, one, if you would have done your homework, you probably would have known that it was salacious and unverified. And that's James Comey's words. But two, it's because they actually subpoenaed the DNC. They're going to probably get these documents before the FBI ever gets the servers to the DNC.
I'm just wondering. Yeah.
Realize that. Why is BuzzFeed getting the documents before the FBI can get some damn servers? It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, that's a great point. And, you know, what is the DNC actually getting out of this? You know, I mean, they're just going to look ridiculous too.
Yeah, I think that, well, to continue, the article says that the DNC is actually citing privacy concerns. That's why they're not going to turn over the information that they absolutely don't have. I can almost guarantee they don't have. But they're citing privacy concerns. That's what they said.
Maybe it would reveal like who in the DNC actually put forward the money, even, you know, to create this.
Yeah. Well, I think that so the DNC has like a separate so they're funded, like they have to follow with the FEC, and so they're funded, and when they are calculating their funding, it just goes under the DNC. So we can almost guarantee that Debbie Wasserman Schultz was obviously involved in it, but it was a group effort because it's like opposition research essentially, which is common from both parties because they took over from the Republicans. So from the RNC, they took over GPS or fusion investigation into Trump from the Republicans. So the Republicans were paying for it at first. Then the DNC took it over, and then they asked Fusion GPS to go through Christopher Steele because he is actually he hates Trump with a passion, and he's willing to play ball if you pay him. So yeah, but it's so stupid. I don't get it. Like, if you have the information, just give it to him, right? Mm-hmm. Just give it to him. You supposedly have it. You started a war over there. Like,
right. What are they
hiding? Started a Cold War. So go ahead, say it again.
Yeah, I mean, what are they hiding? You know, if they've got nothing to hide, then just bring it forward and we can figure out what's going on. You know, if it really was the Russians or not, like they say.
Yeah. Yeah, it's if I had the document or the server that could literally put an end to Cold War II, I would probably hand it over unless I had something. It's the same thing. It's the same concept with the fact that Mueller's investigation it looks like it's going to go into about 2 years, right? The reason that investigation started was because they were so confident in the evidence from these two random anonymous intelligence sources. They were so confident that they wrote articles about it, that people believed them. And then a year and a half later, why is it taking you so long? Why you have to indict this person and that person and this person and that person and going for the little fish so you can get the big fish nonsense? If you had the evidence, why is it still a discussion? Why isn't it already over?
And you came up with you mentioned earlier a great term called opposition research. And, you know, basically that's a fancy term for slander. You know, it's an attempt to discredit someone publicly. It doesn't actually really matter if it's true or not. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And maybe at the local level, it wouldn't be that, like, opposition research at the local level is like not really anything crazy. But when you talk about the national level, I mean, look what Hillary did to Barack Obama. Found a picture of him, you know, standing next to a Muslim and spread the rumor that he's not from this country with a couple of pictures, you know. So if we in this surprised at this Russiagate nonsense. But when you think about how insane that rumor was, oh, he's a Muslim. And once again, that came from Hillary. The idea that he was, that was started by Hillary. Everybody remembers the commercial, you know, who do you want to answer on the phone in the middle of the night commercial? That was Hillary. So to pretend like it's outlandish that she would do something like this against Donald Trump, which it's much easier to get away with it against Donald Trump, is silly. And I'm just curious as to like the people who believe Russiagate, what is giving the information? What is taking so long? I have a theory, but why do you believe that it's taking so long? I mean, other than the fact that they might have something to hide, do you have any other idea what it could be?
I really can't understand what's going on. Well, like you said, you know, we have to be careful about this because we're still at the point where if you and I question it too much, you know, they think that we're, you know, getting along with the Russians or, you know, we want to be communists. Like it's so like surreal. Yeah.
I have a horrible Russian accent though. I could be a British terrorist though. I could be a British terrorist. And if they ever went to Christopher Steele and came up with the dossier, I would be the first one in line to give whatever information they need so we can prevent another world war or Cold War between Great Britain and the United States. So, yeah, see, I could be a BBC reporter, man. You better ask somebody, show, man. I watched a lot of Idris Elba. No. Nice. But so the article goes on to say that the material requested from the DNC, which amounts only to the digital remnants left by Russia, who hacked their systems, is highly relevant to the defendant's ability to establish the truth of the allegedly defamatory claims about them in the dossier. And the DNC has identified neither privilege nor burden that would prevent them from complying with the subpoena. Yeah, right, because that's what they always supply with subpoenas. Let me tell you what happened to the last subpoena I was aware of, by the way, that was requested by a state level DNC. It was in the Tim Canova campaign. It was very, very recently. And guess what they did with that subpoena? They wiped their ass with it and started burning and destroying documents. And they are not there. No, at this very moment, they have not been held in contempt of court. So,
wow, I had no idea about that. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Debbie watched. So she's her name is Snipes, and I can't remember her official position, but essentially was in bed with Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and Tim Canova was like, you know what? I don't believe you actually won, and so they were like. He actually went to Jared and Liz, and Jared and Liz investigated the voting machines and said, "Hey, can we see the files because we believe that the ballots because we believe that there's a reason to believe that the election was there." And then the court, a federal court, subpoenaed the ballots. Snipes literally destroyed them like the next day. Oh. Right?
Yeah, it's like I mean, if you have to go to a federal court and ask for it and it still gets destroyed, like what is going on in this country?
Yeah, exactly. Like, what how do you not get arrested? Like, if that was one of us, we would be arrested not the next day, the same day.
Yeah.
Like the same day. There would be no discussion. But once again, because I live in Broward County, and Broward County is insane. Okay, the amount of corruption in this particular district is. I mean, it's Debbie Wasserman Schultz district that she continues to win, no matter how much people despise her, and nobody's ever challenged her, obviously, except for Tim Canova. And the problem with Debbie Wasserman Schultz and why the Democratic Party locally and nationally has to back her is because she knows so much about everyone's corruption that they can never allow her to not be a representative because she's going to go to jail without the protection from like her status. And they know that. And politicians are snitches. Politicians are snitches. And so I don't believe that they'll ever stop at least attempting to protect her. But like I said, and that's not, by the way, that's not just like the politicians. That's like the judges too. The judges, obviously, as you know, are elected judges. And so even they have to protect her to a degree.
Wow. Yeah, I hadn't really thought of it that way, but you're right. I mean, once anyone has worked with her, I mean, they know too much, it's, that's how, I mean, let's be honest, that's mafia tactics right there,
Yeah, I mean, they don't call it the Clinton Mafia for nothing.
Yeah.
And so, so BuzzFeed is both BuzzFeed and the DNC are in some shit, because I think that this lawsuit could be huge. You just implicated a guy in trying to corrupt an election, and he didn't sue because he thought he was going to lose. He probably sued because you have there was the information that was presented was not substantiated or founded at all. And now they have the burden of proof now to prove, oh yeah, it is. And because this is, like I said, the DNC for information. So you're getting sued because BuzzFeed is getting sued, and all they're asking you for is information. And if you can't provide that information, in my opinion, that pretty much should seal it. That should be it. We shouldn't even be, I mean, we don't give any credence to the Russian investigation, but at that point, it should be a non-discussion anymore. Because if they're lying about something as simple as a dossier, something as simple as some documents, and at the same time refuse to give their servers to the FBI. Why are we even talking about this anymore? It didn't happen.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, once it goes to court, I think they're afraid of, fact finding or getting all this on court record. That'll just expose them. That's what they're afraid of.
Exactly. So what do you feel? Go ahead.
Yeah, just and on the face of it, from the very beginning, as soon as the Steele dossier came out, I'm sure you felt the same way. It just for BuzzFeed to publish it, it seemed like it was written by some trolls on 4chan or something. It was just completely ridiculous on the face of it to begin with, not to get into details, but it's just what are they peddling?
Yeah, exactly. And I want to know your thoughts on this, because this is my theory. I don't think they ever planned on having Trump actually impeached, not legitimately. I don't think they ever planned on it holding any water. I don't think they ever planned on it being substantiated. But I do believe that they brought in a special counsel and that they planned on carrying this out as long as humanly possible. And it looks like at this very moment they're going to be successful, because their hope is, in 2018, they win a lot of seats back. That's what their hope is. It doesn't really look like that, but that's what their hope is. And so you don't even need to have all the seats back. You just need to have about 40 to 40. And then they can swing Republicans over who don't like Trump, who are worried that their personal record is going to take a hit if he's not out of office. And then they have to adhere and back what he is saying or doing. And so once that happens, they can actually start articles of impeachment legitimately. Now, for those of you who don't know, impeachment doesn't mean prosecution, and the actual the bare minimum for articles of impeachment is not a lot. You just have to do what's called conduct unbecoming. So anything that doesn't credential, you can technically impeach him for. Now, once you get to the Senate, that's when the prosecution part begins. However, if they win the election in 2018, and it won't finish all of them, I think until September, maybe, or late September, or early August to late September is when all the primaries and generals are over. So then, of course, they're not going to sit down and then do the impeachment process. No, they're going to wait. They're going to start whipping people over into the impeachment thing, and then after that, the beginning of 2019, they're going to hit him with impeachment articles. And guess what? People, for some reason, think that 2020 is when the election is over. No. I don't know why y'all think that. People start campaigning the year before. So you're going to be campaigning in 2019. But what do you think the conversation is going to be about? It is literally going to be impeachment, Russia, impeachment, Parkland shooting, impeachment, Russiagate, Mueller, dossier, maybe a side will get thrown in there. And we're going to be talking about everything but single payer, everything but the economy, everything but, you know, these disastrous trade deals or foreign affairs, like all the stuff that matters to us is going to be totally thrown out the window. And at the same time, they think that this impeachment would negatively affect Trump. But what it's going to actually do is bolster, in my opinion, the independent community and empower him, very similar to how he was empowered during the election. Because they're going to put us between a rock and a hard place. And I'm not going to pretend like I'm okay with them disingenuously in trying to impeach somebody for political gain, because I'm not about that. So I'm pretty sure you feel the same way.
Yeah, exactly. If they have something on Trump, you know, they should really go after him for other reasons. Like making all this up, you know, I don't think they want this to go to court. I think you're absolutely right. Like, I think that wasn't the intention at all. And I think you brought up a great point saying that this is just meant to be dragged out into the next election and dragged out until the midterms. And I think you're right. I think by hook or by crook, the Democrats are going to try to get more people into the House and Senate, local seats. And then that way they can continue to promote this. I don't think they want this to go to fact finding or, you know, I think they'd be willing to throw BuzzFeed under the bus if they have to.
Oh, I mean, they kind of already did that. The Greyhounds were already rolling over them. They're like, hey, can we get those documents that we get? Hell nah, man. We don't know y'all. We don't even know y'all like that. We even invite y'all to the party. Like, damn, like, that's grimy. Like, because think about it. The only reason that the dossier gained such a, I don't want to call it popularity, so much infamy, if you will, and people became aware of it was because of BuzzFeed. So the DNC actually owes BuzzFeed a debt of gratitude because they're the only ones stupid enough to print it. Fucking idiots.
Yeah, and someone from the chat just brought up, like, just because you get impeached doesn't mean, like, you know, he's out of office. I mean, look at Bill Clinton. Like, he got even, you know, more popular because of the impeachment. You know, if they want to go after Trump, go after him for legit reasons about these proxy wars that we're starting, you know, about our economy, something, anything else of substance.
Yeah, literally anything else. But that's, they don't, because it's crazy, because this isn't the first time they've done this. And a lot of people think that this is like new, but this is actually straight out of, I don't know if you would, who was president right before JFK? Was it Hoover? Eisenhower. No. Yes. Yeah, it was Eisenhower. So Eisenhower was president right before JFK, but this isn't the first. And Eisenhower was Democrat, right? Eisenhower was Democrat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this isn't the first time the Democrats themselves have played this game. And the establishment Republican side. It's not the first time they've played this game either. If you all recall, there was this little war called the Cold War right after World War II. And so they convinced the world that we had a huge problem with Russia. And it's kind of crazy to even think about right now, but that shit literally came out of nowhere. They were our allies. We handed them the Eastern Bloc. We got Israel because we both of us pretty much threatened to not be part of the United Nations if we didn't get what we wanted. And we both saw opportunities to establish ourselves as military superpowers and as really as an empire. Both of us had the same idea. But out of nowhere, literally out of nowhere, we were just like, you know what? We got beef with Russia now because they were doing, you know, their economy was Saddam was a dictator. We're not stupid. We know that, but that wasn't our business, you know. But we pointed at Russia over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. Meanwhile, while we're like, potentially we're going to go to nuclear war with Russia, we invade Vietnam. Potentially, Russia's going to try to invade us. We invade Korea. Potentially, we start beefing with Cuba and, you know, the Bay of Pigs and all that nonsense. And then what was that? What was the, not the Bay of Pigs. Oh, we start the embargo against Cuba, which, by the way, wasn't about money. It was about information because they didn't want to tell y'all they didn't want the Cubans to tell y'all what we were doing there. And then on top of that, we go to, we were fighting against Nelson Mandela in the apartheid by the way, we fought against Nelson Mandela and Fidel Castro because Fidel Castro went to South Africa to help Nelson Mandela, and he desegregated Cuba. And so, and we went to Egypt and we went to Turkey. So like we actually were fighting a bunch of proxy wars very similar to what we're doing right now. And the entire time we kept using the guise of, well, if we don't go to Vietnam, how are we going to stop nuclear war? And nobody thought then, well, people eventually caught on to it, but nobody thinks about like, that shit didn't make no goddamn sense. And it sounds very similar to right now, right? You scare the shit out of the public, making them think that like that Putin is the second coming of Lucifer and that he actually has some effect on our economy and our well-being. And then the next step is go to Syria, give money to Saudi Arabia to bomb Yemen, fund terrorism, ignore the fact that whenever Tulsi Gabbard introduced a bill to literally stop funding and stop arming terrorists, they voted it down unequivocally. Like there was nobody pretty much except for I think like Bernie Sanders and like maybe one or two other people who voted in favor of it. So they keep screaming Russia, but we're in Iraq, we're in Syria, we're in Yemen, we're in Afghanistan, we're in Sudan, we're in Libya, Chad, Somalia, and we still ain't stepped foot in Russia. We're in Ukraine, still haven't stepped foot in Russia.
Yeah, we're definitely, I mean, we've been having a proxy war. That's what Syria is about. That's, the pipeline. And yeah, you're reminding me of history class now, right? It was like called the domino effect, where it was like if one country fell to the Cold War, to the Soviets during the Cold War, then it'd be the next one and the next one. So it was their reason for the United States military complex to completely spread out across the whole United States. And, that's what our empire has done. We can't cede anything to Russia at this point. And I just thought it was completely irresponsible, like you said, to like, say it was like some Russian trolls with like their memes that completely destroyed the elections. Meanwhile, we have evidence of voter shredding, voter purging, election fraud right here in our own country.
Yep, exactly. So speaking of voter purging, do you want to go ahead and read that Board of Elections?
Yeah,
article?
Here's our segue, guys. So it started off with, I think both of us have talked about this in the past. There was over 200,000 New Yorkers purged from a single district. It was Bernie Sanders' district that he lived in New York City. And they were purged from the city rolls, and they were all registered Democrats, I believe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so basically the latest news from this is that the Attorney General, Eric Schneiderman, came out and said he announces a major settlement with the New York Board of Elections over the voter registration purges. So in January, the Attorney General Schneiderman filed suit against the New York City Board of Elections for knowingly purging over 200,000 New Yorkers from the rolls before the 2016 primaries in violation of federal and state laws. So they've been found guilty of doing this. And basically all that's happened now is that it's just a settlement. Like they're not going forward with charging anyone for purging all these people. I guess people waited in line for hours and hours, and then they were told that they weren't on the list, or, they were just gone. And that would have swung the election in that district.
Oh, yeah. Oh man. Because that's huge for a couple of reasons. So the reason that I ended up in New York, because a lot of people remember me living there, was because of that event.
Wow.
Think about it. Like it was estimated that just in Brooklyn, 200,000 people were purged. And that's once again, just in Brooklyn. And once again, coincidentally enough, people think like, 200,000 people isn't that much. When you're talking about a primary election for one party, that's a lot, especially when you consider how big Brooklyn is. Brooklyn is freaking huge. It is part of the greater Long Island. And so And it's dense, and it's dense with hipsters. Yes, I don't know how they did it, but white women actually turned Brooklyn into a Starbucks. So it's dense with hipsters. And till this day, if you go to Brooklyn, all you see is Bernie signs, which would make sense. Anyone would win their district. But the problem is when it's obviously the delegate distribution. So you not only have to win, but you need to win decidingly, and you need as many delegates in that area from every precinct as you can possibly get. And when you don't know how things are going to turn out, you can't risk the fact that Bernie would have a legitimate advantage, right? Because Hillary calls New York her home state, but it's not really her home state. She actually wasn't even living there when she decided to run for office. And she lives in upstate New York. She doesn't live in the city. And so it's not really her home state. That really is Bernie Sanders' home state. And upstate, he destroyed her. And she knew that would happen. But in the city, she was unsure. And so when every single voter, and I was in, and a lot of people know this, I was in that Board of Elections meeting when they was going on. They pretended like we were crazy. You just have to file a complaint. We're looking into it. And I wasn't going to say anything. Then I just couldn't take it anymore. I got up and pretty much cussed them the fuck out. In front of everybody. It was not pretty. I was just I don't know if y'all got this confused, but we pay y'all salary. You work for us. It's not the other way around. You don't need to be condescending because we're getting upset and frustrated because you're not answering anyone's questions. You're just deflecting and they were trying to essentially prolong it so that nobody asked questions because they were going to cut the time. So yeah. But we know that at least 200,000 were purged in Brooklyn. At what that number was in other areas, in other regions of the city. Look at what happened with, you remember what happened with Arizona? I don't know if you,
that's really what woke me up and inspired me to start my channel, really, in a lot of ways. Yeah.
It's, it was, man, RIP to Uncut, by the way, US Uncut. But they were dope. But, the thing with Arizona is that it showed the pattern that it seems like almost exclusively it was Bernie voters who were getting purged. And on top of that, the registration switches and the purging came right after the DNC took back Bernie Sanders' listserv because of that little bullshit that happened, where they said that Bernie tried to hack their servers, Hillary's servers. And so they had access to everything. And they could easily target at that point. Not that you needed much to target because you just, hey, where are the young people living at? Where are they saying they're going to vote? Okay, let's go switch their voters. But they were targeting people who clearly had gotten phone banked. Because that's on the van system. Yeah. It tells you, who's voting for who.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And because they remember, I don't know if you remember, they took back their servers. They took took his servers, and refused to give him access to them. So he couldn't even campaign.
Yeah, I used to
at the local levels.
Some local stuff with Democrats. So I've used Van before in the past. And I remember I was on Facebook and all these groups were like, we can't access Van today. What are we going to do? Like the Bernie Sanders crew, they were freaking out. Like that's how they were running their whole campaign. And it was just, they were just cut off.
Yeah. And JMC Clinton 8 said that, Red, White, and Blue dude said, what about California? And I'm glad he brought that up because that was going to be my next thing. Right now, Ray Lutz is suing because California just decided that hundreds of thousands of ballots should just disappear. And then, coincidentally enough, like in every other state, 98% of all absentee ballots went to Hillary Clinton.
Wow. I hadn't even heard about that.
Oh, yeah. It's every single state. People forget how ridiculously anomalous that this election was. People were making the argument that, well, if just because he is tens of thousands of people go to his meeting or his rallies doesn't mean that would translate into votes. That's bullshit. Never in the history of anything has a presidential primary candidate had more vote or more people turn out at their rally and then lose. It's never, ever, 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 ever happened. And so the fact that they try to apply this logic for Hillary Clinton kind of proved how delusional the world was. So we can almost assume that when we gave them the legitimate evidence of election fraud, they weren't going to believe it.
I mean, if you need like anything more just in your face, I mean, it's obviously the Brooklyn district and the 200,000 people that were purged. And basically, like, they didn't even get a slap on the wrist. Like, I'm looking up what happened. Like, these people could go to jail for a long time, and people do go to jail. Yeah. So the
best thing to come out of it was Perez, I believe her name was.
Mm-hmm.
She like lost her law firm because she got blasted all over social media, and like everybody, all their contracts, all the cases, she had to close her law firm.
That's it, Yeah. And it's basically the New York City Board of Elections committee. They're being told that they need to overhaul their voter registration list, maintenance policies and procedures. They need to adequately train relevant staff, and now they have to submit to regular monitoring and oversight. Pinky
and they're
swear.
full of shit. They're full of shit because, first of all, which is interesting that article left this out. It was actually a Republican who purged all the voters, and it was a one-person decision essentially. That's all it took. And they didn't. The problem was that they didn't suspend. What happened immediately? They should have suspended the elections, and they didn't, because they wanted it to happen. If you cared about the integrity of your state's election process, you don't pursue with that election when 200,000 people are not allowed to exercise their constitutional right to vote. And 200,000 people did their due diligence and enrolled or registered for the Democratic Party 6 months or however long it was supposed to be when they registered in advance so they could participate in that closed primary, which for all intents and purposes is probably unconstitutional itself. And on top of that, there's so much of the article leaving out, like the fact that the person who did the purge, the woman who purged the voter rolls, like was doing business with Hillary, like direct business with the Clintons. And she was scapegoated because they knew that she'd be able to find another job. She was actually about to retire. And they're trying to say, I mean, the New York Board of Elections is they need to be held accountable, and they're responsible to a degree. But the woman who did it, she committed a federal crime, and she's not going to go to jail. On top of that, this fucking bullshit attorney general, by the way, defended the Clinton Foundation, even though they had multiple lawsuits brought against them in the state of New York. As attorney general, this motherfucker never prosecuted or took anyone seriously. And with the same exact breath, as soon as Donald Trump gets elected, he's like, "Yeah, we need to investigate the Trump Foundation." I said, "No, the fuck you didn't." No, I know that's not what you just said. For what? Well, because we think that he may be using his office for personal financial gain. I said, "Oh no, you didn't just say that was the reason too." Well, what proof do you got? Well, we don't have any yet, but we feel really strongly about it. I'm saying, so hold the fuck up. So you didn't actually, with all the proof we have of Hillary Clinton, you swore to God there was no reason whatsoever to investigate her. But with Trump, you don't even have proof yet. I'm sure if we looked, we could easily find some. That's not the point. The point was you're only doing it to bring negative attention on him, while simultaneously ignoring Clinton. And I hate motherfuckers like that. I hate people like him because what they do is they take this type of situation and pretend like they're the knight in shining armor. And I predicted actually that the New York Attorney General is either going to run for office or run for president or run for governor, because they're actually trying to make him rise through the Democratic Party. So Like, and they keep writing random articles about him and how noble he is. And I know how the fuck that shit goes, because the same thing happened with Cory Booker. Remember Standing Rock?
Oh, you know, yeah.
Nina, or excuse me, Tulsi Gabbard went to Standing Rock. Jill Stein, Jama Baraka, a few senators did, state and national level. And who else went? Bernie, I think Bernie went.
Yep.
Yeah, and Bernie went. And so, and then the moment that Cory Booker says, you know, I think we should probably be investigating this, it was all over the news. It was all over the news. I said, I know that motherfucker did not just make headlines for saying there might be something wrong going on. No shit. Somebody lost their arm. Another person lost their eye. And you think that we should maybe start investigating Standing Rock?
Yeah, and then he's allowed it, and everyone just thinks he's so great. And I think you're totally right about Schneiderman. Like, and that's the thing is, like, I learned this term recently. It's called a kakistocracy. So it's rule by the worst. So it seems like the people who engage in the most flagrant, illegal behaviors, I'm thinking of Debbie Wasserman Schultz and others, they get propped up by the DNC at this point. Like, no one is going to ever hold them accountable. It's just when the New York City Board of Elections freely acknowledges that they broke the law, and all they're going to do is just, pinky swear that they're going to fix it next time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like they just know. They know in their heart and in their souls that they're not going to be held accountable. They're going to laugh at me, and some people are even going to be upset. But this is why when people, and I live in Miami, so people get upset when I say this. I'm like, do you ever wonder why Fidel Castro, even though he had a legislature that was 50-50, even though they have a 99% literacy rate, their science is out of this world? And it's crazy because they were totally cut off from the Western world and in the Western economy, and still managed to find a cure for lung cancer. It's hard for you, knowing that you're up against an imperialist nation like the US and all of their Western allies, to say simply, let me just step down and see how things work out. And so what do you do? If you don't hold so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so accountable, then you look weak. If you don't hold, and so whenever people are like, oh, they were persecuted by Fidel Castro, I'm like, probably. For those of you who don't know, anyone who was a politician, anyone who owned land, anyone who was rich, and by the way, to be any of those three, you had to be all of those three. They were working for Batista. Batista was America's little puppet. We put him in power. By the way, they pretend like they hated communists. Cuba was communist under Batista. He came from the Communist Party. So we can pretend like the situation isn't as convoluted, but because of our politics right now, it should be pretty easy for anyone to see, wow, this is why motherfuckers get in power like Fidel Castro and are able to stay. Because for the first time in the history of their nation, politicians and corrupt politicians and corrupt elitists were being held accountable, whether it be by the end of a gavel or by the end of a gun. They were being held accountable for destroying their country and driving their masses into the fucking poorhouse, for representing an oligarchical government that was the United States, because we had a sugarcane cartel that we were running out of Cuba. We actually fought Spain because they tried to come back into Cuba. We were like, nah, homie, back up, son. So whoop, we on the way. Seriously, that's what happened. So it's when you see things like this, that's exactly why I'm like, that's why the hell Fidel stayed in power for so long, because they were so happy. They were so happy that somebody held people accountable. And you can't think about it. Fidel and Che led a revolution against Batista and were extremely successful. And we, instead of fighting them, we decide to embargo them. But why do that if you know you can win? Why do that when you know you can install another dictator? Because no, you probably can't win. 2, because you know that those people are down there fighting for their lives, and they believe desegregated the country. This man put their legislature is 50% women, 50% men. Okay, like they have the best healthcare in the world. They have like a top 3 medical school in the world. If you go to like to Havana's medical school, like you can get a job literally anywhere, getting paid millions. And so, of course, they're going to let him stay because they believe in him. If they didn't believe in him, it's really easy to start a revolution against a leader who the people don't believe in him. You know what I'm saying? And we could have disseminated propaganda. We could have done all the things that we've done in Honduras, in Mexico, in Eastern Europe, and obviously in like the Ukraine, and then Afghanistan, and in Africa. We've done that time and time again, but for some reason, Cuba's the only place it didn't work. Maybe because they believed in what he was actually doing. And so we need, and I'm not saying we need to have a revolution like Fidel Castro's, but what I am saying that is if we don't have a political revolution that is peaceful, it is going to get to that point, and that will be the fall of the empire.
Yeah, and we know
it may be a good thing.
Right, and exactly like you said, the powers that be control both sides and get us, you and I, the little people, fighting against each other. And I think the point that you're making with Cuba is that, say what you want about Castro and whatnot, but an ounce of populism goes a long way with the people. And that's what people saw in Bernie Sanders. And, that's what people saw with Trump, like that's why people would rather vote for Sanders or Trump than they vote for Clinton, who's just outright an imperialist. To speak to people, even a tiny bit, goes way farther than any of this other fake military industrial complex that's been shoved down our throats, for almost a century now. Yep.
I have like I said, I have my quorums with the way Fidel did things. I have my quorum with the way that even Putin. I have my quorums with the way Putin leads, but I am not going to sit here and pretend to be holier than thou, or that our leaders those leaders are somehow uniquely worse than anybody, except for maybe 1 or 2. But you can't even say FDR because he had an internment camp full of Japanese people.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and people, and I hate to break it to y'all, but every single war has been fought over oil, pretty much. Almost every single war in the last century was fought over oil. And people are like, no, that's not true. Like, I want you to think about something. In high school, when you learn about World War I, Holly, what do you remember about what we were taught about World War I? How did World War I start?
We didn't even have a World War I unit. I'm serious.
Yeah.
I was like, what? No. I'm like,
oh, you know why? The nonsense that they preach about World War I, it makes, and you don't no, actually, I think a lot of kids, I know I did. It said some Franz Ferdinand or something like that gets assassinated from like Austria, and then they're like, oh yeah, so the whole world with the fucking war because some random guy from Austria got assassinated. Isn't that how all world wars work? Because everybody cares what happens to a random leader in Austria. That makes literally 0 sense. Y'all get that? It was about money, right? So want to look at, the U.S. finally decided to get involved because Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. Do you know why Japan attacked Pearl Harbor? Because we were about to screw over their oil supply for selfish reasons, for imperialist reasons. It was over oil. Why do you think that the U.S. and Russia were beefing so hard during the Cold War? Because we gave them all of Eastern Europe. A lot of people don't know the end of Eastern Europe is Turkey. Turkey is obviously a dominantly Muslim nation. The reason that it's dominantly Muslim is because it borders Afghanistan, Syria, Iraq, those important places. So why do you think we really put Israel where we put it? Because we needed someone to monitor that situation. Why do you think they have more intelligence on the Middle East than we do? And we pay them just to exist, while out the other side of our mouth, we say, we have no idea how we're going to figure out how to give reparations to Black people for slavery. But meanwhile, all I got to do is go to Israel and say, hey, I'm Jewish. Well, here you go, man. here's some money. Here's a job. What else you need? You want to get married? Here's a house. You know,
you went there.
Literally, you know, like, and because it's always been about maintaining and destabilizing, because once a country becomes stable, they become competition. We have built our country we built capitalism around the same way we've built and sustained our ridiculous reign over the world, which is by destabilizing and throttling competition so that we can take it over. And we always have an excuse to be in your country if you're destabilized. But we've never think about they always say, "Oh, we have to go take out Saddam. He's so dangerous." Okay, well, let's go take out Kim Jong-un. You know, why we need to do all that? You know, he ain't hurt nobody. We still haven't taken out the leader in Vietnam. We still haven't taken out, like, you know, there's leaders on leaders on leaders. We became allies with China when they were legitimately the worst type of, I don't know what you want to call them, but they were horrible to their people. They were horrible to the farmers. They took farmers' land. They say that Fidel took farmers' lands. He didn't take farmers' lands. He actually took it from the elitists and gave it back to the farmers. So yeah, but in China, they legitimately took farmers' lands. So we see this established pattern where they pretend, the U.S. pretends like we're the world police, but that's a misnomer. That's not even true. We're trying to stop democracies from forming. We pretend like we want democracies everywhere. No, we're trying to stop democracies from forming. We don't want that. The only time we want you to have a democracy is if you're already a legitimate economic superpower. And one, we won't mess with you, or two, we'll assist you, especially in making sure that the establishment candidate. And then we siphon you, control your trade policies, control what you can and can't grow, what you can and can't produce. We tariff the fuck out of you if you don't listen. And oh, hold on. Oh, actually, that's my friend too. Go ahead. But yeah, what do you feel?
So
like, what's going to happen with this Board of Elections shit? I'm like, how do you feel? I
appreciate your rant there. Like, I no disrespect with that. Like, you just gave us all a history lesson here. And I think the thing to understand is it didn't become any more blatant to me than what happened in Yemen. So people can say whatever they want about Gaddafi and the state of Africa. You know, we go in there anytime anyone wants to nationalize anything. That's the point that you're saying about oil. Anytime a group of people, a population, wants control over their natural resources, a puppet regime needs to be instituted. And that's been the entire plan of the CIA, going back to Project Gladio, back to World War II. The whole plan is to make sure that you can destabilize countries that want control of their oil, of their water, of their trees, whatever it is, anything that can be a commodity in that country, gold. That's why we're constantly destabilizing sugar. Why we're constantly destabilizing Africa is for all these minerals down there. You know, China and the United States, like you said, we're in Chad. We're in all these countries in Africa. We have no idea what's going on down there. Well, we're doing the same colonization and making sure that we can overthrow anyone who tries to get control of it. And that's what happened with Gaddafi trying to go to the gold standard, or, you know, any Hussein, anyone who wants control over the oil or resources. And if I feel, you know, I'm tempered. I'm a little bit excited that we can actually talk about this now. You know, if you tried to talk about this a couple of years ago, you were a crazy conspiracy theorist. And I think people are starting to wake up, say, hey, look, a century or more of these patterns over and over again. Hey, what are we actually doing in these countries?
And one last thing before I gotta go. One thing that should scare the hell out of any and everybody is the Libya situation. So, and because we're seeing it right now.
Sorry, Libya.
No, you said Libya. No, you said Libya with Gaddafi. Okay. Yeah, you said it. Okay. So with the Libya situation, a lot of people don't know that Africa has an African Union, just like we have NATO, just like they have a European Union, just like we have, you know, a UN. It's a highly functioning African Union, by the way. And also, Gaddafi was the elected chairperson of the African Union. And people don't know that for some reason. Oh, because our history books go out of their way to dehumanize Africans and make us think that they're totally, you know, savage. And there's a reason for that also. But people don't know that because of Hillary Clinton, because of the West, Gaddafi agreed with the AU to step down from power to protect the rest of Africa, so that the West would no longer have any reason to stay involved with Libya and Chad, because that's where a lot of that beef came from. Because lo and behold, guess whose pockets the Chadian president was in? Yeah, that was us. So we were paying him to essentially put troops on the Libya-Chadian border, and that's where all the destabilization came from. So Gaddafi was fighting back, and the reason why he was fighting back was because he and several other Arabs or Arab nations, because Libya is like half Arab. It's technically in Africa, but it's half Arab, half I guess you would say black, or what they would say in Hebrew would be half Sephardim, half Ashkenazim. So, but anyway, they were trying to establish an Arab Union, because they were all going to join with the African Union, and they were going to create the gold dinar. And that's why we destabilized that area, because they were going to back it with both gold and oil. And there was no way in hell we were going to compete. And instead of just conceding like, well, shit, they outsmarted us. Like, we've only had the advantages that we've had economically is because our grand resources. We have a lot of resources because of the outline. But after he agreed to step down, they were like, hell no, we cannot have that reason stabilized. We cannot give them a reason to kick us out. They just literally rushed in there and that was it. And they lied and lied and lied and lied and lied. And to this day, if you ask people, what did Gaddafi do? They can't tell you that he killed a bunch of people. Yeah, he was in the war. Yeah, that's what happens when you fight against the people on the other side. You got to kill them. Like, you can't win the war without killing the people on the other side. Once again, I'm not saying he's innocent. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that you can't stay in power that long unless you are treating your people well. Like, not being constantly in war, if that makes sense. Like, you can't be in constant war and stay in power without treating your people well. It doesn't work like that. And this is every historian and political scientist can tell you this. And the fact that they lied and they were in Libya for much longer than they ever told you, just like we've been in Syria for much longer than they've ever told us. And they kept it up, and no matter what, no matter who was in office, Democrat or Republican, they were going to take out Gaddafi. And they're doing literally the same thing right now in Syria, which lets you know that this is much bigger than a petty squabble or even the destabilization of a single country, for something bigger than what we are, even probably bigger than anything we can even comprehend at this moment in time. So I'm interested to see how it'll turn out in the long run.
Well, that was great, huh? we went through a couple of articles, and I think we got some great chat. You guys are awesome in the chat, and hope you liked our first episode. Yeah,
we're gonna be doing this every. We're gonna let time. I don't know. We don't know yet. Probably gonna be like later in like early evenings, like probably like 5 or 6 Eastern, around that time. So definitely make sure you check us out every Wednesday here. We're going to be putting this on a podcast too. So if you want to download and listen to your car, feel more than free to do so. And I'll put the link to that in the description as well. So with that being said, thank you all so much for tuning in. And always remember, ladies and gentlemen, find your balance. Peace.